I got a phone call that said Nick Roeg wanted me to read a script. Don't look now. And so they sent it to me, and I read it. I looked at performance. I didn't look at Walkabout, with the wonderful Jenny Agutter. I later worked with her in The Eagle Has Landed. And then he called me, Nick, and said, did you read the script? But I was fascinated by it because I was fascinated by extrasensory perception. And so I had a terrific conversation with him. I said, I like the script a lot. I think it's incorrect that someone who has extrasensory perception does not profit by that experience. I think, in fact, it should save his life. It shouldn't result in his death. I went on for quite a while, pontificating. And Nick finally interrupted me and said, do you want to do the film or not? And that was a turning point in my life. It was pivotal. Everything began then. Everything. It was amazing. Suddenly the penny dropped and I realized that actors were workers and they did what they were told. And you could offer a suggestion, and if the director liked it, fine. If he didn't, he didn't, or she didn't. And I said yes. And I went to Canada and did a film called Alien Thunder and met my wife, Francine. I said, my only condition is I have to go to Venice first, because I was in Venice. I had had spinal meningitis when I was shooting Kelly's Heroes in Yugoslavia, and I had gone to Venice and was terrified. Spinal meningitis really fries your brains, and I was completely crazy. And I'd gone to Venice to get a train to Milan, and I was terrified. And I went back with Francine, and we had a wonderful time. We stayed in the Bauer Grunwald Hotel, curiously in the same suite that Nick was later to shoot that famous conjugal love scene of the Baxters. And I said, okay, I'll do the film. So we shot the English part before Christmas. We took a Christmas break, and then we went to Venice in those beautiful winter months and shot the film there. I liked him a lot. It's interesting, I had all my life terrible vertigo and fear of drowning and fear of being out abandoned in open water. And I sail boats all the time, out in open water alone. And when we were doing I liked him. I wore that wig, that Ziggy wig. We put a little bit too much hair in it, but because so many of those guys in that period, particularly architects, looking really good and thin, had afros, I guess they weren't called afros. What were they called? I don't know. But in any event, we were shooting in a basilica, and it was a scene where I was on a gantry up above and putting a tile in, and a board broke loose and something came down, and my character falls down and is on a rope captured and swings in and saves himself. And we had, of course, a stuntman to do that. I was not going to do that. One, I had vertigo and was terrified to do it. So we came the morning. We had the place for one day. And the stuntman refused to do it. They were complicated, the stunt guys, the cascadeurs in Italy at that time. And he didn't think the insurance was good enough for his family in case he fell 50 feet onto a marble floor and died. And Nick was desperate, as Nick can get, desperate. He said, I'm going to lose the shot, and it's key, it's elemental. And I said, I will do it. They strapped me up, put a Kirby wire on me, and ran it through my sleeve, and then got me up onto the gantry. And curiously, because it wasn't me up there, it was John Baxter, I didn't have any vertigo. And Nick said, listen, what we're going to do is hit you with a 10x2, which is this huge board, and knock you off the thing. The gantry will drop down. You'll swing forward, land, and we'll get you off right away. Have no fear. Don't worry about it at all. I said, okay, I wasn't worried. I had this Kirby wire that was going to secure me. So they secured all of that. And the 10x2 comes down, hits me, I go down, I swing down. I go over. There are 3 guys standing on the balcony with Nick and Tony Richmond, who was the director of photography. And they've got these huge sticks, and they push me off. They push me off. I'm out in the middle, 50 feet above this marble floor, under this dome of a little basilica, turning like that, twisting, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Finally, after minutes, he lets me go, and I land. And it was that kind of an experience all the way through. At the end, there's a question in there, whatever it is. Anyway, at the end, you'll see where the knifing of the cutting of my throat happens. We'd had an Italian special effects guy come up, and with this special knife that was going to hit me, the blade was going to go back. And I said, let's try it. And he said, I trust this. I'll do it on my son. I said, no, not on your son. Let's just do it on this little stick. So I held out, I picked it up off the ground, a little stick, and he took the knife and he went, and the stick shattered into a million pieces. I said, guys, this is not going to work. So we saved that shot till the end of the shooting, because Nick thought for sure that I was going to die. And I thought I was going to die. And such was our passion and our commitment to the project and my belief in the brilliance of this fellow Roeg that I agreed. And what we did, in fact, do was shoot it in reverse. And so it started there and pulled back with this, it's a woman actually, a very short and older woman from Rome, quite famous, and who wore the little red coat. And so this was peppered all the way through. And I was, years later, Vic Armstrong is a very famous British stunt director, second unit director, wonderful guy. And we had worked together. He had doubled for me many times, and he later doubled all the time for Harrison Ford. And I was talking to him about this experience about falling down, and I was saying I was okay because I was on a Kirby wire. And he looked at me, and he was white in the face. I said, what's the matter? He said, you were going like that? I said, yeah, I was going like that. He said, if you go like that, Kirby wires break. I went, oh. Well, so there we were. So it was that kind of a picture. I see somewhere, they always talk about Alan Scott. It's terrific, Alan. But his co-writer was Chris Bryant. And Chris was the other partner in the writing process of that script. It was a script that was filled, I mean, they call it a horror picture, and it's horrible only because of grief and loss. Incredible sadness. There's a story about because in this film they lose their child. Originally in her story, the child died, I think, of meningitis, which is a death that happens. You lose a child to a death; it's a terrible loss. But if you lose a child because she stumbled into your pond when you weren't looking for her, looking at her, taking care of her, and dies as a result, then it has to do with neglect and guilt and irresponsibility, and that's unpardonable. That you carry with you all of your life. And for him to know it, for him, my character sees it on a slide that he's looking at, and knows instinctively that something terrible has happened and goes to rescue her and dives into the pond to save his child and comes up like some Poseidon, some sea monster out of this with Ziggy's wig, holding this now dead child. So that there's a I don't think it's Bhutan, but it's a country like that in the Himalayas, a century ago, where the emperor had his son's wife had a son, And so there was great joy in the country because there were now 3 generations of royalty, and the emperor had this huge party, that, you know, a celebration. And he asked the Taoist priest, who was the poet, who was the philosopher, to write a poem for the occasion. And the moment came. They'd all the fireworks, everything, great eating, feasting, and the Taoist priest came forward and looked at the emperor. The emperor said, "Please give me your poem." And the Taoist priest said, "May you die, may your son die, may your grandson die." That was it. And he turned and walked away. The emperor was outraged, absolutely furious, grabbed him and said, "How dare you? How can you possibly say that? How can you do that?" And the Taoist priest said, "Would you have it any other way?" And of course you wouldn't. You wouldn't dare. You couldn't deal with it. Of course you have to die first. You can't have, you know, I read this morning that one of Bernie Madoff's sons had hanged himself. I've seen so many parents have to deal, I mean, what a terrible situation that was, but to deal with the loss of a child. And what guilt and responsibility that man and the mother must feel. Terrible. Anyway, so you wouldn't have it any other way. And so John Baxter certainly would not, you know, have had it any other way. Julie is a brilliant actress. She is the DNA of a film. She's the purity of her performing is exquisite. The simplicity of it. She sometimes runs into a problem because when you go to the toilet every day with that DNA, it doesn't seem to you to be that exceptional, and you don't feel maybe that you're quote-unquote acting. There was a story about Sybil Thorndike, who was a famous British actress, watching, I think it was called The Prince and the Showgirl with Olivier and Marilyn Monroe. And she was trashing Marilyn Monroe to Olivier. And Olivier was just watching Sybil Thorndike and shaking his head because he knew that Marilyn Monroe, with that exquisitely beautiful simplicity that she had, that perfection, had captured everything, and that Sybil Thorndike would look silly in the middle of it, you know. But you know, sometimes Julie feels a little desperate to be more of an overt actress, I guess. Needs to feel that way. So she hires, you know, acting coaches who stick stuff on her that are it's just dreadful. But she's as good an actress as you'll ever meet, ever, anywhere. You know, and I don't have much relationship with actors. My relationship's with the director. And there's a photograph of Julie and me, the two of us like this, and Nick is there, and we're both almost bowing to him, you know, standing up straight, but heads tilted towards him, listening intently, because he was very, very specific. He knew cut for cut, frame for frame, exactly what he needed to get in his editing room to achieve the kind of film that he wanted. And we wanted more than anything else in the world to serve that need. And so we listened intently, and we followed step by step everything that he wanted. The key to our lives was to satisfy him. It doesn't make any sense nowadays, but it was revolutionary. It was shot with a Panavision 200R. Everything else had been 185. I mean, if you look at the Aeroflex, you know, he used, Stanley Kubrick used Zeiss lenses and 6-wick candles in Barry Lyndon to get the light that he couldn't get because he didn't have a 200R. With that 15 extra degrees of shutter, Nick got stuff that was amazing. I mean, really, you know, and Tony worked very well for him. And Tony's a good director of photography. At that particular time, I remember walking in with Nick, and Tony says, "How is it?" And Nick says, "It's terrific. You've just moved that light there, this light there, and this light there, and put this one up here, and put a fog 3 on that, and we're fine." It was everything was his image. Nick's everything was his vision. Nick. It was brilliant. You see Americans saying, "Oh, I found the film confusing," for a lot of complicated reasons. Fox, and there were other influences that were negative towards the film. Famous influences, nefarious influences, who wanted very much that the release of the film be very limited in the United States. And when Nick came over to see it, he phoned the theater and said, "What are the screenings?" And they said 2, 4, 6, and 8. But the film that he gave them was, I think, 2 hours and 25 minutes long. So Fox had cut out 25 minutes. In England, you never hear of someone saying, "I found it confusing," because it was magical. I mean, if you look at the advertising in the United States, it's a Victorian horror house. But Time magazine, when they reviewed it, said, "If you want to see what The Exorcist should have looked like, go see this film." Everything about it touches the audience. Nothing about it is voyeuristic. Nothing, not the sex scene, because the sex scene is not a sex scene. The sex scene is a conjugal scene. And the key about it is not that you see people making love. You see a couple trying to retrieve a lost or a disappeared relationship, a fragility, an intangibleness that's almost impossible to recapture. But what it does, that scene, is that it reminds the audience member or the viewer of themselves having made love sometime. And that's why it has lasted. It hasn't lasted because it's a really particularly good bang-bang, pom-pom sex scene. It lasted because everybody, when they see it, think of themselves. When you think of yourselves, you remember it. And any question that there was any kind of reality to that, forget about it. Because Julie and I, we had hardly met, and we were standing naked, and we walked like 2 people going into a death chamber, into this room with a bed, and traumatized, but eager to do, as I described before, whatever Nick needed. And he and Tony were in there alone with cables going out, and there's no sound on it. There's no sound of the performers. They just had 2 unblimped Aeroflexes. Do you know what an unblimped Aeroflex sounds like? Like that. But with the rhythm of a sewing machine, because that was the kind of motor that they were run on. And so they were, and the cuts, the actions were very, very short, measured in seconds. And it would be like, "Julie, tilt your head back. Donald, move your head toward Julie's ear." Okay, cut. "Julie, turn your head this way, darling. Okay, lift your chin up a little bit. Okay, Donald, move yourself up. That's it, perfect. Okay, Julie, come." It was like that. It was like that. It was like that. Okay, Julie. Okay, thanks. It was like that for both of us. We walked out of it like that. I mean, it was. I had a story of a friend of mine who went to an actor who went home to his house. He lived here in California, but his parents had a house on the East Coast. His parents were in their 80s, and he had a key, and his room was always kept for him. And he went home, But when he went home, he didn't phone his parents to tell him he was coming home. He just went home. And his plane was delayed. He got there too late. It was midnight. He opened the door. He walked up the stairs. He walked past his parents' open bedroom. And his mother was on her knees. And his father was coupling her from behind. And as he walked past the room, he went, and the father went, "Oh my God!" And he scuttled down to his room. And I said, "What did you feel?" He said, "I was thrilled. I mean, I was really thrilled that my parents had a sexual life, and I was not able to make love for 3 months." So you go like that. I mean, it wasn't that traumatizing, but it certainly did take your breath away doing it, that scene. You know, it was, but it's like the algebraic formula for defining the area of a curve. The only way you can define, you know, you have a space like that, you write a calculus formula and you break it down into infinitely small parts and you add it up. It's like that question in the film of, you know, how come, if the world is round, how come a lake, when it's frozen, is flat? Well, of course it isn't flat, but it's, you know, it's, so you just break things down. Wonderful. Really wonderful. Really wonderful. And they say, Venice says, that it is the best film of Venice, that it, better than any other film, represents Venice. And we go back there a lot, my wife and I. I have a son named Roeg, R-O-E-G. I don't go to see films that I'm in, so I don't know whether I've actually ever seen it, to be truthful. I should go see it. I saw Clute a couple of years ago, and I have seen, I think, MASH in its entirety by now. Kelly's Heroes I have seen. It's a funny film. He was brilliant, Nick. Just, it was such a pure experience. And she was thrilling, Julie. Everybody was. Everyone was. But the water was, and Venice was. The Vaporetto and the gondole, and Harry's bar, and the pasta. Yeah, it was a terrific thing. It was wonderful to survive it.